and she studied the stars directly, thousands and thousands
Who,
of stars.
tell me, tell me who's been to a star. Tell me who's been to a star or another planet. Tell me that to prove it.
So this is
You're
my
assuming it's an
this
assumption. It's an assumption.
this is
That's all it is. It's assumption.
I, I,
It's a religious belief.
what if I told you I've been to another planet? What about that?
Well, then
I've had extraterrestrial
good for you.
encounters.
I don't believe it.
I know
I
you
don't
don't.
believe it, but
Exactly. So exactly, no matter what evidence I
I
give you,
mean,
you're not going to believe it. Hello, you all. This is Darryl E Berry Jr. back with part two of my documentary, The Five Principles of Flat Earth and Other Globe Deniers, in which I review the interactions and observations I've had and made with flat Earth believers. And yes, there are people who legitimately and sincerely believe that the Earth is flat or concave or convex or just stationary or what have you. And I point out, uh, uh, by definition, my observation and conclusion and position that these people are basing their position on either stupidity, ignorance, denial, delusion, or laziness. Based upon the accepted definition of these words, what they mean, and the so-called evidence they put forth, the avoidance and denial of the evidence we put forth even when they ask for it. And this is part two of this documentary. Now, this part will deal with a debate that I had with someone who calls himself Fight the Deception. The entire video lasted 6 hours, so I picked out a few for this video, and I'll probably go back to that debate over time. But really, most of it could have been resolved um, at the very start, which I'll demonstrate. But for the purpose of discussion and so forth, I went on with it. So I'll jump right into it, and we'll go to the first section, and I'll point out what I observe to be the basis for his position. Let's get started. So we start at about 6 hours and 22 minutes into the debate.
no, I don't. First of all, I don't know who this person is.
I'm,
I
I'm just
mean,
saying. I'm just saying. If we accept that stars are really,
just because she's an official, an official uh, astronomer or whatever, I there's a lot of people that are connected in ways that you just don't even realize it until you look into it.
I
I
see.
mean, it's like all the theories that we've been presented, heliocentrism, Big Bang,
Well, let's
evolution.
back
They're
up.
all
Let's back
presented
up.
by
I
the
hear what you're
Catholic
saying.
Church.
No, no,
Hold
no,
on.
no.
They're all
We're talking
presented.
about something else, though. You're talking. Now, unfortunately, I cut him off. You can hear him starting to talk about the Catholic Church and things like that being involved in these people's positions. One reason why I brought her up is that she did firsthand studies of the stars, and her findings contradicted the prevalent idea of the day. So it's pretty common for flat earth believers to call scientists liars or to say they're just toying a line to get paid or they're some kind of way indoctrinated or something. If you remember, if you watched the video I had after part one, where we did sort of the commentary review or discussion on part one of this documentary, I showed a little clip where these investigators that debunked non-science did an experiment where they let a boat out into the water and had a little sign that had lines horizontally on the board so you can see the curvature of the water from the curve of the earth cutting off the bottom of the sign. And even though they just did that experiment, the flat earth believers still said you pay someone to tell you what you believe when they just did a scientific experiment. So the very fact that, despite the fact that this woman made her conclusions from her own observations of the world, He still insists that she's somehow manipulated or controlled or a puppet of some uh, uh, secret conspiracy, what have you. It clearly fits the parameters of denial, refusing to acknowledge or accept the facts of the matter, and delusion. Instead of acknowledging and accepting the facts of the matter, instead accepting your own beliefs about the situation, which ironically is what they often accuse scientists of and quote globers of. So she's controlled by the Catholic Church that is believing what they're saying, despite the fact that her position is based on her direct observation and experimentation that contradicted the prevalent position of the day. Let's keep going. About something different. That's why I
I'm
brought her
not.
up.
I'm not.
No, so listen, remember
Because
this.
I don't know who that is though.
I understand you
So I
don't
mean,
know,
you're
but
bringing.
well, maybe you should look her up first then, because I'm in other
Yeah,
words,
maybe I will.
you don't know what you don't know her, so you don't know that you're saying something different. I read the biography, so I'm telling you, you're talking about something different. So since I read the biography and I know what she did, let me tell you why it's different. Her at the time she was alive, people thought, as I said earlier, that the stars had the same composition as the planet. So, like you're saying that people just they accept like these this basically propaganda. Basically, what I'm telling you is the findings she found contradicted that. Everybody of the day said this, and she studied the stars directly, thousands and thousands
Who-
of stars.
Tell me, tell me who's been to a star. Tell me who's been to a star or another planet. Tell me that to prove it.
So this is
Your
my this
assumption. It's an assumption.
this is
That's all it is. It's assumption.
I,
It's a religious. It's a religious belief.
what if I told you I've been to another planet? What about that?
Well, then
I've had extraterrestrial
good for you.
encounters.
I don't believe it.
I
I
know you
don't
don't.
believe it. But
Exactly. So exactly, no matter what evidence I
I
give you,
mean,
you're not going to believe it. So here we take another look at denial at its finest. So you heard him say himself, "Tell me who's been to a star, or tell me who's been to another planet." As proof. That was his uh, the parameters he set, saying, "Oh, that's just belief. It's just assumptions. No one ever actually has been there. So tell me who's been there, and then we have something." So apparently, as a flat Earth believer, you can't possibly go into outer space because it's not real, or and the planets out there are not real. It's just an assumption, and nobody's been to the stars. It's just an assumption, and so on and so forth. So obviously, he didn't expect me to say that I've been there. Obviously, he expected me to have to say, "Well, I don't know anyone who's been," and then he could continue to build his position of ignorance. So that seems to fit the position of ignorance. And in other words, first of all, he was ignorant of the fact that I went into outer space, but he utilized his belief that nobody's been. In other words, that we're ignorant of planets being real because we haven't really gone there. As the basis of his argument. So he was ignorant of my position, and he's trying to use what he perceives to be ignorance, his position that nobody's been to outer space, as the basis of his saying, well, it's just a belief or an assumption or what have you. Now, upon telling him that I've had extraterrestrial encounters, and I've had experiences of going into outer space and going to other planets, so I know that other planets are real, what did he do? When I presented him exactly what he asked for to turn the tide, he simply would not accept it. So, I mean, that fits the definition of denial, refusing to recognize or acknowledge, a disowning or disavowal. The very proof he asked for, I provided. Obviously, he wasn't expecting it to be possible to be provided, because you could hear his discomfort when I said I had been. But after I said I'd been, what did he say? I'm not going to believe it. So even though he initiates that discussion by saying present this, and then we're talking some proof. You present it, and then so obviously they don't really want proof or evidence. Um, that's the delusion. I've observed that they've concluded that the Earth is flat or concave or convex or what have you, based upon either their stupidity or ignorance or denial or delusion or laziness, and whatever, and they've already made that conclusion. Then all they do is simply, as the phrase goes, cherry pick what they believe supports that position, and anything outside of that, they simply don't accept it, even if they ask for it. It's quite interesting. So if you're saying it's a hologram, where is your evidence? I'll wait for it.
Where's my evidence that it could be a hologram,
Yeah,
or that it
yeah,
definitely is a hologram?
whatever. The evidence that it could be, that it definitely is, whatever it is. Let's go.
Well, I got one link already going up,
Okay,
and I'll get the other one in a second.
okay. Is that the link that was just put in right now, 539 just now?
Yeah.
Okay, let me put that up. We have this again. I know what that's going to do. Let me just go ahead and copy it out, even though sometimes it works.
See, these guys are going to get ready to get caught on wires.
To learn how to control that when I set things down on the ground.
Okay, so let's look at this.
It's good.
Watch the guy on the right, his left leg gets hung on the wire.
As you can see, I'll float, Mark is floating, and so it really takes a lot of effort to learn how to control that. When I set things down on the ground, you can let it go and it sits
Okay,
there.
let me ask you something. Let's go this piece at a time. So where's my camera at? Let me make sure I'm looking at this.
The guy gets caught in his wires too.
So give me a
Same
moment.
time.
Did my hand just hit a wire right there?
I'm not watching you.
So let's look at the video again. Did my hand hit a wire there?
I can't see your hand. I don't know what you're, I don't know what
Look
you're
at
talking about.
look at this. Or maybe the stream is lagging a bit. Just look at the stream for a second. It'll come up momentarily. But when you see the stream, let me know if my hand hit a wire there.
I can't see your arms out of camera, out of the view of the camera, pretty much.
Am I still presenting? Am I presenting in the Hangout? Maybe that's what it is. That's right. I have
Yeah,
to
you
present.
are.
I have to present
I
so
could
they
see
can.
your hand.
Okay. Did my hand hit a wire right there?
I couldn't see. The area
Did,
was too small to see. I
did,
mean,
did you see my head go forward and go back or turn left or right at any point in the video? Did you see my head
uh,
move and go back in the other direction?
no, I wasn't looking for your head to go back.
Well, why don't we do it this way? And I ask that you actually play along with me. Would you put your hands in the air and then put it down and put it back in the air momentarily, and let me know if that's proof that your hand hit a wire? Because I don't see any evidence of a wire in this video. Is it possible that the person simply didn't put his leg down right away? Have you ever ran or jumped or anything, and you put one foot down and then you put the other one down? Just because his leg didn't go down at the same time as the other one doesn't mean it got caught on a wire, unless you can point out the video evidence that there's a wire. Just saying there's a wire doesn't mean there's a wire. There's other explanations for the reason why both his legs didn't hit the ground at the same time. So are you saying there's some evidence in this video that there's a wire? Because just the fact that his leg didn't go down at the same time as the other leg doesn't mean there's a wire. Just because you say there's a wire doesn't mean there's a wire. Isn't your contention that it's impossible for a human being to put one leg down and then the other one down?
Sure, I guess if you wanna believe that.
I'm
Here's
asking you a
another one. Watch.
question. Are you saying it's impossible for a human being to put one leg down and then put the other one down? Is that impossible
I'll
without there
float,
being a
Mark
wire
is
stopping the
floating,
leg?
and so it really takes a lot of effort to learn how to control that.
I'm really asking you a question. Is it
Yeah, I
possible?
guess. I mean, sure, it's possible. I
Okay,
suppose.
okay, it's not a suppose.
Is
You
it
know it's
possible?
possible.
Is it possible for people to teleport?
Now I want to go ahead and pause it here for a moment. So here we have some classic uh, uh, demonstrations of the principles I put forth. So we got into this discussion because a fighter deception was saying that the ISS is a hologram, or it's fake in some way, some kind of hologram or what have you. Um, and his and actually I'll get into the details of his contention on that and what he was saying about the app, the tracking app of satellites and so forth on another part. But suffice it to say, I asked him to present his proof uh, that the ISS is a hologram. And either proof, and he wanted to clarify, proof is that it is a hologram, proof that it could be, okay, proof that it is, proof that it could be, whatever. Okay, so this is his evidence that he's presenting to at least question that is real, because they're apparently, according to him, this is some kind of sound stage or something, because their legs are hitting on wires. Now, when I asked him basic questions, seeing that obviously this video doesn't show proof of any wires, he changes the subject. Denial. Refusal to recognize or acknowledge. And you notice when I asked him, is it possible for a human being to put one leg down and then another one? What did he say? Well, he supposes. Denial. Denial. So, yeah, let's keep on going. I want to stay on topic, sir. We've just established that it's possible for somebody.
We're on the topic of the ISS being up there and being legit.
Okay. So talking about teleportation,
right?
Are we trying to prove teleportation is real? I'm asking you a question.
Is it?
Are we trying to prove teleportation is real? I don't know. I would say yes, it's possible. Teleportation is possible. I can conceive it being possible. They've already teleported light rays, as a matter of fact, or particles. That's correct. I remember reading about an experiment where they teleported a light ray or an electron, something like that. So yes, teleportation is possible.
Okay, how about actually, if you stay on that same video.
Now, you notice he told me, he informed me later, I believe, on a comment on one of my videos, that he was asking that question because of a video put out, if I remember right, by the Russian space agency, where it was basically a recorded video, and they photoshopped in or what have you, this lady grabbing this plush pillow as if it teleported in. So again, position based on ignorance. He expected me to say that no, it's not real, so then he could bring this video out and say, well, look, they're showing teleportation, so it has to all be fake. I'll address that in detail in another video. But notice now how, first of all, we were talking about wires in this video. Now apparently he's getting uncomfortable because I'm drilling into the actual evidence instead of just people saying there's wires when there's no evidence of it. So now he wants to talk about teleportation. So I'm telling him, I want to stay on the subject. We're talking about wires in this video. No, we're talking about whether the ISS is real or not. Okay. So I brought out the research that I had on teleportation. He just changes the subject again. So these people, they're just grasping at straws, just whatever they could possibly cling to support their belief, which fits into delusion. To mislead the mind or judgment of, to deceive. His conceit deluded him into believing he was important. His denial is deluding him into believing that there's wires in this video and the ISS is not really there, or that he actually has some kind of proof or evidence that it's a hologram. Let's keep going.
Do we run?
Now, where are you going with the teleportation thing? Let's finish this one part of the video.
Well, before we change videos.
No, we're still on this one part. I'm still trying to get your because you kind of acknowledged it, but you didn't. So
go to 3 minutes.
No. We're talking about this part right here. We still didn't finish this part. This is the point. And you'll see this is common with globe deniers. Of course, they have no evidence for the Earth being flat or concave or convex because it's is a globe. So obviously, they don't have any evidence of that. So when you point out their absence of evidence, that their position is based upon ignorance, they change the subject. So again, this is the video that he put forth, and he's steadily wanting to talk about something else. First, he was let's talk about teleportation. Now it's let's talk about another part of the video, when he still hasn't acknowledged fully that there is no evidence of a wire in this part of the video. But I'm not going to let him get away with it. Let's see what happens. I will acknowledge this. I'll acknowledge that it's possible for people to fake videos. I'll acknowledge it's possible for people to make sound stages and we see it all the time. There was a movie called Gravity where Sandra Bullock and your boy was out of space. So obviously it's possible for people to fake things. That's possible. But it's also possible that somebody can put one foot down and then put the other one down.
Yeah, but when you,
I'm not finished yet.
You have to look.
I'm not finished
You have
yet.
to look at all the evidence.
I'm not finished yet.
If you,
I'm not
if you
finished
don't,
yet.
if you
I'm
don't
not
want to look at all
finished
the
yet.
evidence,
I am not finished yet. The difference is you said his. Now this is interesting. This is a common go-to I see with flat earthers or globe deniers or whatever yoke. You have to look at all the evidence. You have to research. This is the evidence you're presenting. You have to look at all the evidence. And he hasn't been able to justify the first piece of evidence. So apparently what they do is keep jumping around and jumping around and jumping around. If they can grasp this straw, if it hasn't been shown to be nonsense yet, they grasp on that straw. And once it's shown to be nonsense, they just jump to something else and grasp on that straw. That straw. I mean, speaking to him, he seems to have basic intelligence. It seems to be just denial and delusion. Mostly denial and delusion. So, I mean, the fact that he's going to several different things throughout the video means that he has some concept of the preponderance of evidence. But in his denial, he has just baseless evidence. Just baseless evidence. So based upon this, he simply has an entire plethora of this baseless things. And because he has a whole lot of baseless things, he accepts it that looking at all the evidences, that proves it. But it's just a whole bunch of baseless things. If you have a whole bunch of baseless things, it doesn't make it any more valid. So denial that he simply doesn't acknowledge that. I believe he's intelligent enough to understand this. But apparently his denial and delusion just will not let him. So rather than simply acknowledge that there's no evidence here, that this evidence he's presented so far is baseless, he just wants to jump to something else, which will of course be just as baseless. Let's keep going. Foot trapped on the wire. So we have a situation where it's possible things can be faked. It's possible things, so he could just put one leg down and not another one. So it's up to you to prove the wire is there. You're saying the wire is there. So since we know it's equally possible that I wouldn't even say equally possible because it's to me you haven't proved that it's equally possible. Let's just say it's possible somebody could be on the sound stage and there's a wire. It's possible somebody could put one foot down and another. If you're saying it's a wire, what's your evidence that there's a wire? I see no evidence there's a wire because it could be just simply that he put one foot down and then put the other one down. Simple. So if you're saying there's a wire, where is your proof there's a wire? I don't see a wire there. Are you able to see a wire and point it out to me in the video?
Not that particular one, but
okay. So does this prove there's a wire? Let's establish that.
To me, it does. I mean, because there's so many other videos.
So the fact, and it's so hilarious. To me, it does. And this is the preponderance of evidence that he refers to. Just that there's no proof or evidence there, but he just believes it. Denial, delusion. Denial, delusion. Ignorance, just not knowing. Because obviously doesn't know that there's a wire there. He can't show that there's one there. I mean, it starts to make me think perhaps there's some stupidity there as well. But clearly we can see the denial. But still, I'm not going to let him get away with it. Let's keep on going. That to you it does mean it doesn't. Because if it did, it simply would prove it. Let's go to the next part. Let's go to the next part of the video.
When I set things down on the ground, you can let it go and it sits there.
So we're not talking about personally belief. We're talking about evidence and proof.
Okay, I got some right here for you.
Okay. This time he hugs his arms on the wires, hangs his arms on the wires. Okay.
Yeah, that one we can skip that one.
So
go to 3 minutes.
So,
3 minutes and 50
hold
seconds.
up now.
Go to
hold up now. You use. You notice he could see he's starting to recognize our conversation is starting to break him out of his delusion a bit. Obviously, before we spoke, he was absolutely convinced that this proved that there's wires, enough that he would get on a debate, a public debate, and present this as evidence that there's wires. Obviously, his position was that this demonstrated there's wires. Right? He started off by saying, look, this is going to show there's wires. But now that I'm actually given an example of actually looking at the evidence and seeing if it's valid, he wants to jump to another part of the video. Denial. But again, I'm not going to let him get away with it. This is evidence. But now since I pointed out the fact, that a human being could simply move his arms back and forth, now that I pointed out the fact that just because your arm stops or your leg stops doesn't mean a wire stops it, you have to prove there's an actual wire there. Can you prove there's a wire here?
Okay.
You cannot prove there's a wire there. Is that correct?
I can prove there's people on harnesses.
Can you prove there's a wire here?
No.
Okay. So I finally got him to admit that this doesn't prove there's wires, but obviously he thought it did to the extent that he used it as evidence. So obviously, if he's talking about some preponderance of evidence, you got to look at all evidence. Obviously, that means nothing because this is the type of evidence he's presenting, and this is characteristic of flat Earth or concave Earth or convex Earth or stationary Earth or whatever kind of globe denier it is, based upon my observations and experiences with him. Now, one of the criticisms that Fight the Deception had was that I didn't go through the full video of this liar, liar, pants on wires video. So what I'll do is go ahead and go through the whole video right now. And you all please let me know if you see evidence of wires or harnesses. He wanted to go to 350 or something like that. Let's just watch the whole thing. And let me know if you see any evidence of wires or harnesses or anything like that. And I'll let you know if I do as well. Let's take a look.
As you can see, I'll float, Mark is floating, and so it really takes a lot of effort to learn how to control that. When I set things down on the ground, you can let it go and it sits there. And so we think, just like at home, you have your lights on the ceiling, so that is up. But then you can do this, like Randy's doing right now. It looks like for him, that he's standing up. So there's really no sense of direction other than maybe the writing on the walls and the lights that we have. Really neat when you're working, you can get in all different kinds of spots and it all seems to work fine. So it's a great place to live and work. When you're working, you can get in all different kinds of spots and it all seems to work fine.
Is this a hoax? Are you really in space still?
See the hair? I don't know. We're gonna have to do something for you.
Oh yeah, I can do that. Watch this. Oh yeah, I can do that. Watch this.
Thanks very much. I know we've got limited time and you've got lots to do up there, but I guess you want that special. Lots to do up there, but I guess you want that special. Lots to do up there, but I guess you lots to do up there.
What's the most fun for you? I mean, is that it? Is weightlessness it? If somebody asks you what's the most fun?
You know, I think the most fun thing for me, aside from being able just to do something like that whenever you feel like it, is being able to share this experience. And so I try and keep in touch with friends and family through email and using the phone. You know, I think the most fun thing for me, the most fun thing for me
you designed in a certain way to have it actually the screen directions flopped, right?
Yes, yeah. It's on wires, but it's all upside down, and then the camera does a sort of rotational move that makes everything else look. It's sort of, we found like even little tricks like flopping images or things like that, or putting a camera upside down or things like that could do a ton, because
could really help sell it.
Because the intent actually is to sort of confuse the viewer enough in terms of directionality, because that's sort of what space does. There, they actually aren't on any wires at all. They're just sort of moving, kind of acting like that. But the set has been clocked and turned around, so that it's, again,
you're disoriented.
You get away with it for just that brief scene, plus with an object floating by, like the film canisters and things. Just
the camera back.
Things like that can hopefully do just enough to help sell it.
Yeah. Did any of you all see evidence of wires or harnesses? I saw people moving their hands around the microphone or moving their hands around headset wires. I saw a person push off the floor, but they say that they didn't. So ironically, and you'll see this as we continue through the different parts of this documentary, that precisely what they claim scientists do, they do. Like the after talk of part one, where they said you pay people to tell you what to believe, when the person just did a scientist. They may not pay this person to make this YouTube video, but they certainly let this person tell them what to believe. The person in the video said there's a wire, and they believe there's a wire, even though there's no evidence of a wire. The person in the video said they didn't push off of anything, when clearly you can see the person stepping forward with one foot, with the back leg bending against the floor and then flipping. But because the video said he didn't push off, they believe it. There's no evidence of a harness, but the video says there's a harness, so they believe it. Exactly what Fight the Deception was saying scientists do. They just listen to what did he mention, the Vatican or what have you, and all this stuff. We'll go through more of the video later. Specifically, there was one part where, if I remember right, he mentioned some of the things that it might be directing these deceptions or what have you. But yeah. But if y'all saw evidence of harnesses or wires, please let me know, and let me know the minute or second that you see it. And yeah, I'd be happy to talk to you about it as well if you're one of the globe denier types, and we just missed it in the video somewhere. But I mean, anybody who's looking without being mired in stupidity or ignorance or denial or delusion or laziness, can clearly see that all we saw was somebody denying and deluding themselves, and people believing that person's delusion. So there we have it, you all, part 2 done. I'm sure I will come back to this video, the realizing the shape number 20, and go through other parts of that debate. Maybe I'll intersperse other debates and interactions and observations in between. But thank you all for watching. Be sure to visit DarrylEBerryJr.com. I'll put the link right there. You can read books that I've written. You can sign up and take classes that I'm putting forth on, for instance, basic metaphysical development, out-of-body travel, skill, interacting, contacting, and interacting with extraterrestrials. And you can learn to do these things and have your experiences as well. I've been into outer space through out-of-body experience. I've seen and interacted with extraterrestrials, both physically and non-physically. So you can yourself learn that space is real. I know that outer space is real. I know that the moon is real. I've been there through the out-of-body state. I know that other planets are real. I've been there through the out-of-body state and on alien craft, whether physically or non-physically. And you could also look into other things like the afterlife and things like that, which don't match religious belief. And we'll talk about that on one of my other reviews where I had discussions with globe deniers on those topics as well. So thank you for watching. This video will be premiered. So I'll be in the live chat with everyone while it's being premiered. And I'll stream another follow-up talk after this one premieres. And I'm sure in the future, after I finish making these parts to the documentary, I'll put them all together into one big documentary and have that uploaded as well. Oh, and one more thing. One thing we can learn from this interaction is to let the globe deniers talk. Several times I cut Fight the Deception off, knowing that he was heading into an area of nonsense. But of course, you notice that when I let him talk and present his point, he just fell flat on his face because it's baseless. Not every time he acknowledged it. But if you watch the video, you can see. And I'll touch upon some of those other points in further videos. But in the end, I've learned that it's not really worth it to talk to the flat earth believers or the convex earth believers or the convex earth believers or the stationary earth believers, whatever the case may be. Whatever evidence we present, they're not going to believe it. They're not going to accept it. They're not going to investigate it, not seriously. And of course, there are a few that are the exceptions to the rule who disavow globe denial eventually. But the majority of them I run into, no matter what you say, no matter what you do, they're going to stick to their denial and delusion, or they're just too stupid or too ignorant, or they're just too lazy to investigate or make any changes to get the knowledge anyway. So if you do talk with them, it's a good tactic to simply let them talk and explain, and put their stupidity or ignorance or delusion or denial or laziness on full display. So thank you all for watching, and we'll talk later.